If you are someone who's looking to take venture capital money or take PE money, if you're looking to take angel investor money, you are no longer in control. You are at the mercy of your investors. You're at the mercy of your customers. You are at the mercy of the market climate. Just because something works today might not mean it works in 6 months. But if you think you are in control, you are fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Influence to Equity. Today, I have a special guest, my COO, Tilmon Keaton. In this episode, we're diving into the misconceptions versus the reality of entrepreneurship. Often, the true thoughts and experiences of a serial entrepreneur are hidden behind the glamorized stories. Join us as we pull back the curtain and share the unfiltered truth about the entrepreneurial journey. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned entrepreneur, this conversation is bound to be good. Tilmon, welcome to the episode.
It's a heck of an intro.
Thank you.
Also, I'm not that special. I'm all right.
Yes, listen, the people got to know who's running the company, who's the face behind the face.
Yeah, I've been falling on my face sometimes, but hey, I'm here.
But that is entrepreneurship. Tilmon, let me start with, and obviously we talk every day. We are strategizing every day. We're spending hours racking our brain, right? Yeah. Especially considering, bless your heart, you've decided to take on Sarah Belay Inc., which has Sarah Lifestyle. It's got my VC. It's got my PE work. It's got, Sarah Lifestyle, the brand. It has Influence to Equity. Then now we've added our media production company. There are so many entities underneath it. And I think that people assume that the process is just so sexy because I make it look easy.
Yeah.
We make it look, honestly, like it's just this gentle, swift process to becoming entrepreneurs. What do you believe, or how do you feel, or what do you feel are some of the misconceptions about entrepreneurship and this journey?
I think the number one misconception about entrepreneurship is that it's all easy and you have balance every day. No, you don't. And there's all these things that you're thinking about constantly, and you always have to pivot and change your strategy. And there's all these elements that go into what actual entrepreneurship actually is. Right. And all these new skills sometimes that you have to learn along the way. And there's all these failures. And, I feel like I fail every day. And so it's always being willing to pivot when the timing is right and when it makes sense for you, your business, everything that you're doing. But there's all these things that you have to constantly be mindful of, and you're constantly learning. So your brain is going all the time. It's fun.
It's so fascinating to me that, and by the way, this is not an episode where there's one versus the other or one thing is better, right? You think that you leave a 9-to-5 and you're going to become an entrepreneur and you're going to work similar hours. That's a damn lie.
Yeah.
We are consistently working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our brains never shut off. We're always ideating. We're always strategizing. We're consistently, like you mentioned, pivoting. What do you believe are, for a beginning entrepreneur, what do you believe is the first pitfall that they tend to fall into?
So taking a step back really quick, and you could slow me down if this is not what you're asking, but I think back to, so I did this bike ride from San Francisco to LA. And
which hold on, I got to cut you off for a second.
Wait, you got to let me. Wait.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is crazy.
So I did this bike ride from San Francisco to LA. And if you're unfamiliar with the distance of San Francisco to LA, it's
far
over
AF.
500 miles.
Yeah.
And so I woke up one morning and decided at 1:42 a.m. that I was going to do this bike ride from San Francisco to LA in honor of my brothers and for my nieces and nephews who lost their parents. And I remember on the third day thinking to myself, what have I gotten myself into? Mm-hmm. That is entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of people assume that once you decide to do it, then it's just going to work. No, it's not just going to work. There's going to be a lot of pitfalls, and there's going to be a lot of challenges of you and your skill set. So you have to constantly be training yourself, your mind, learning new skills. And I mean, aside from the cash flow problem that a lot of companies have, right, aside from just the skill sets that you have to consistently learn because you always have to be pivoting. As I mentioned, there's these elements of thinking there's this specific lifestyle that you're going to live, and there's this misnomer I think that happens with people when you think about entrepreneurship. You think about traveling, and you think about all the free time you're going to have. Like, that mindset in itself is a pitfall,
Right.
because you're going to fall flat on your face, and you're going to find yourself on that day 3 of entrepreneurship. It may not be exactly day 3 for you, but thinking back to what I just mentioned with the bike ride, you find yourself on day 3 ready to quit. And most businesses won't succeed anyway after the first year, but that's an entire conversation in itself. But I think this idea that there's this specific lifestyle that you're going to live as an entrepreneur, turn your TVs off, because it's not like that.
The truth about an entrepreneurial lifestyle is broke for a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
You are in a consistent state of worry. You are in especially as a startup, you're in a consistent state of stress. You are consistently unsure if you're making the right decisions. You're consistently unsure of your skill sets and imposter syndrome. It is such a facade when you see entrepreneurs showcasing what they've done or what they are doing and thinking that it's really, really sexy. If you are not saying, F this ish, I quit at least 5 times a day, you're not doing entrepreneurship right. If you're not like, I effing quit, this is too hard, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't have a sales background, or if you have a sales background, you don't have a brand background, and if you don't have a brand background, then you don't have a marketing background. If you don't have all of these elements in place, your business will fail.
Yeah.
The statistics are, and again, this is not to scare anyone, but it should make you rethink, do I truly want to become an entrepreneur? 20% of businesses fail in the first year. 50% of businesses fail by 5 years. They don't even exist anymore. And it's not to say that all of these realities can't not be dealt with and be fine. But I think too, like, by the time you see a Facebook, a Tesla, by the time you are hearing about a company, they're likely 8 to 10 years in. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. By the time you hear about these companies and they've raised, $25-50 million, by the time they've raised $2 million, they've probably heard 100 no's trying to raise capital. There's the mismanagement of funds. You don't even know how much you're supposed to be pricing a product, which we'll get into later. There are just so many misconceptions. And if we're talking about an entrepreneurial lifestyle, if you think you're going to have a work-life balance, you're not.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to see your family, you're not. Being an entrepreneur as a mother is terrifying daily.
Question for you.
Sure.
What do you feel like the most terrifying part of being an entrepreneur as a mother is for you?
I've been in this game long enough to understand that the most terrifying part of this entrepreneurial life and journey for me as a mother is time. And I'm a special needs mom. All of these things require time.
Right.
My business requires time. Every entity requires time. My learning and skill development requires time. I don't just show up and learn sales. I've spent 7 months with you just studying and learning the last 7 months, spending hours every day studying. Okay. I started with branding first, but I had to learn marketing. They're not the same thing. Those things require hours of studying. And it also requires a very heavy investment in, like, financially in my time and my efforts and in master classes and coaching and mentors and all of those things. So there's only so many hours in the day. And being an active and present parent is at the top of my list above all else. So knowing that I have to find a way to either integrate my time where my children get to be involved in my business, or that means I'm not getting any sleep because I need to make sure that my time is allocated for my children appropriately. If I have to sacrifice my children and my time with my children, a lot of times I'm going to say no to other areas of my life. Yeah. I could have fast-tracked my career so much further, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my children in order to receive that kind of success, which was a very daunting reality for me and a harsh reality. Right. When it dawned on me, like, I want to get to that billionaire mark. I want to get to that. Then it was like, okay, maybe $750 million. Maybe it's $500 million. But I had to ask myself, What was my intention behind reaching that $500 million mark? What was my intention for reaching that $1 billion mark? But the things that it required of me in order to reach that level of success, I had to be real with myself. I'm not willing to sacrifice my children, the time with my kids. They're 12 and 14 now. I'm not willing to sacrifice my children in order to reach that level of success. And that's okay. Because success is subjective.
Yeah.
And my level of success and the things that I want to accomplish and the reasons why I want to accomplish them, as long as I can do those things and do them exceptionally well without sacrificing the time and effort and memories with my kids, I'm willing to do so.
I mean, you, of course, talked about how daunting it is just, and I also know that you don't sleep. So that's another
I do not.
thing. You said something earlier about you're not trying to scare people away. No, be scared, because there's a lot of moments that you will have that you question every single thing. And if you haven't built systems for yourself to manage those things, those are going to be moments where you crumble. But again, getting back to what you just talked about as far as how daunting it is to be an entrepreneur, what do you feel like has changed for you in, let's say, the last 6 to 12 months as an entrepreneur?
Here's what I'll say. The things that have changed in the last 6 to 12 months in terms of how I operate in my business and with my personal life is creating systems in place for both.
Yeah.
We talk often about one of the misconceptions is folks think that entrepreneurship can be done alone.
Yeah.
The harsh reality is you can't. Entrepreneurship is already lonely anyway. You're going to find yourself separated from your friends. You're going to find yourself separated from your family. You're going to find yourself separated from the people closest to you and the people that you thought would be the most supportive of your journey. They just truly do not understand and cannot understand what this journey looks like. So you can try to make them understand, and you can't.
Right.
And so because it's already a lonely journey, you have to find your people and create systems that you can work, integrate, and take something from conceptualize and then create a product or a system or a service or whatever it is in order to make it work, right? I realized in the last 12 months, especially since living in LA, that if I do not have a system for my personal life, that means, and this is my reality with where I am in my life right now. If that means there's a chef, there's a chef. If that means I meal prep for the week, I meal prep for the week. If that means that's a cleaning service that comes every week, then that's what I have to do. I had to learn how to buy back my time in order to create a system around me and my children to be more efficient. So if my home was efficient and my children are happy and my children are loving their life, which, I mean, they're children, they're going to be mad about something, or you know what I mean? It just is what it is. But if I can create a great, peaceful, calm environment for them, that makes me a better CEO and founder and entrepreneur. But in the same breath, entrepreneurship, again, cannot be done alone.
Yeah.
So when I put together a team, now I have a COO, I have a marketing manager, now you're running our sales team. Then there's the social media team that's doing their thing. By creating and placing people in the right place, that's made me a better entrepreneur by freeing my mind to learn new skill sets, to grow the business, to scale the business. And you've watched it in real time where, because of my brand and the place where my brand is, my brand reputation is so good right now that it is essentially getting me into rooms I never saw coming.
Absolutely.
Or rooms that I prayed and hoped for. But the brand reputation is so good, and my reputation is so refined, and my voice is so clear in how I show up, that it's allowed me to move into new spaces. It's allowed me to go into film. I'm working on my third film that went into production this week, into a new VC, actually 2 new VCs. We're going into sports. We're doing something special next week with the Hall of Fame. There's all of those things happened because my brand was solidified, but it's also because there were systems in place that allowed me to be in more rooms without wearing me out.
Yeah. And of course, I talk to you a lot about your reputation and what you have built as a brand and how powerful that is for you. So I just want to say kudos to you for everything that you do and everything that you've built and the people that you put around you, because that speaks a lot, just generally speaking about who you are, what you represent, and what people see in you when they're representing you in many ways in the rooms that they're in. But I want to say to you, or rather ask you, what do you feel like is the most important thing that people need to recognize as far as branding goes?
One, if you don't know who you are off social, you're not really going to build a true, authentic brand. If you can't communicate your thoughts well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If you can't tell a story that people can resonate and connect with, that's going to be a problem for building a brand. And I think it's also being okay that you're going to piss people off.
Yeah.
You're not going to make everybody happy. But if I know that I'm very sure in what the brand message is for this particular piece of content that I've made, I'm okay with that. And sometimes you have to be okay with taking small L's in order to have the brand messaging that you need to have, so that your voice is clear forward. But if I'm looking at what everyone else around me or in my industry is doing, or what my competitors are doing, I'm going to fail because it's going to sound like everyone else. So take what you know, understand your industry, study your industry, but make it for you and for the very people that you're creating that kind of content for.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about Steve Jobs here recently and being able to connect dots. I think a lot of people sort of feel that their thought is original because it's in a different space. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times the application is original in a specific space, in that sense that it is original. But that creativity came from somewhere else, where that thought came from somewhere else. I think we've seen even in the movie about Steve Jobs, mm-hmm. when he was thinking about having music in your pocket. That's because of something that his daughter said to him. So theoretically speaking, the idea of the iPod was original, in quotes, right, but it was inspired by him hearing his daughter and wanting to have her play more songs. Now, I don't know how true that story is, but essentially that's what the movie reveals. And so thinking about it from an originality or creativity standpoint, that's oftentimes what happens for a lot of us. We're just connecting dots.
Share your thoughts with me on why that misconception can be a problem of, if I build it, they will come.
The reason why this idea of if I build it, they will come can cause you frustration and be a real problem in your business is because despite the fact that you say that, it's not true. It's simply not true. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have built a lot of things and people didn't come. And just taking a step back, just so you understand where I'm coming from, is there's all these different areas of entrepreneurship. So there's products, services, all these things that you can offer. Yeah. And one product example is books that I've sold before. And the strategy that I had for a book that worked in 2012 doesn't work in 2024, mm-hmm. at least in the same way. So I had to rebuild a strategy for that. Even though I kind of had the idea originally that I was going to do it the same way, they didn't come the same way. And so I had to adapt. And so I think you constantly have to be willing to adapt and understand the strategy that works right now, which speaks to what we've talked about thus far, is constantly being able to know that there's a new strategy and applying that to your business and the way that it works. But outside of that is understanding that every step that you take to build a product doesn't mean that that product is going to work for you or that service is going to work for you because of how much time you put into it, or every step that you've taken to bring it into fruition. And I know there's other entrepreneurs who have very similar stories in terms of building these products. If someone has told you, and I'm going to look in the camera as I say this, if someone has told you, if you build it, they will come, they have lied to you. Because if your product doesn't solve a problem for somebody, if your product doesn't meet a market need, they are not coming because it doesn't do anything for them. With every product that you build, with every service that you offer, the customer is going to look at it as what's in it for me. I'm not just going to buy it because you wrote the book. I'm not just going to buy it because you say your camera is better than the Sony. I'm not going to buy it because you say this dress is going to fit you better. One, where's your proof? And are you actually solving a problem? What feeling are the customers going to get when they buy your product? What feelings are the customers going to feel when they buy your service? It's having all of that knowledge and applying that to solve a problem that's going to separate you from other people. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And I couldn't agree more. And some of the I mean, we could talk about many of the stories of the clients that we've had, and some of the folks that we've chosen not to take on. For example, you could build a phenomenal product.
Yep.
You know that there's market research. You know that the issue that you're solving, those people exist.
Right.
You know you've tested it. It looks great. It's perfection. It's impeccable. And no one shows up. But when we peeled back the layers, you put everything in place and spent all this money. You've put yourself in a financial bind personally, or with business loans or whatever else. You've put yourself in a predicament. There's no sales team or no sales training on your part to learn the skill in order to sell it.
Right.
Because the idea that you have an exceptional product, but if you don't know how to sell, it doesn't make a goddamn difference.
Yep.
It does not matter how phenomenal your product is if you don't know how to sell it. It doesn't matter how incredible your service is if you don't know how to market it.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's going to help me find gold and diamonds in the earth. It doesn't matter what. I don't care if it's going to make me taller, skinnier. It doesn't matter. If you don't know how to brand it, it will not matter. Why do you think that people struggle with that process before prematurely launching a product or service?
Well, I think we just spoke to it a second ago. People assuming that if you build it, they will come. And there's all these people who have this idea that their product is so great that the results will speak for themselves. But somebody has to use the product in order to get those results. Somebody has to use the product in order to, somebody has to use a service in order to get those results. Right. So you can have the greatest product in the world, the greatest service in the world, but if nobody knows about it, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
If nobody's using it, then it doesn't matter. You can do everything possible to build the perfect thing. I think I was watching something the other day, and it was talking about the origins of specific games. And there was this guy who developed this game where you put these pieces together to create words, and it was called crossword something. Mm-hmm. And he struggled to sell the product to anybody. He knew it was a great game, but he struggled to sell it. And then he ran into a businessman who they played it at his home one day. And he's like, oh, this is a really good game. How can I get involved with this? Essentially is what he asked. And the guy was like, hey, we could split the business or whatever the agreement was. But here's what we need to do. We need to change the name of the game.
Yep.
Guess what the game was?
Scrabble.
And now everybody knows Scrabble. So the product itself was the right product. It just wasn't branded correctly. And there's a lot of people who will have products like that where if you don't understand how to do the branding, if you don't understand how to do the sales, if you don't understand how to do the marketing, even though you might have a good product, it's going to amount to nothing. Nobody's going to get the result.
The next misconception that I want to talk about actually cracks me up because the audacity of this next one. And the misconception is, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a founder, doesn't matter what you think your title is, you think you're in control. What are some of the ways that, or what are the ways that we can show proof or provide examples of you're not in control? Because Lord knows I have thoughts.
Yeah. I think one of the most fun things about entrepreneurship is always thinking you're in control. That's one of the most fun parts about always thinking you're in control, because there's so many of different elements. I'm going to speak to one side and I'll let you speak to the other. But you always feel like you're in control, or always think you're in control, until you wake up on day 3 of that entrepreneurship journey and you're like, wait a minute. I need to know sales. I need to know marketing. I need to know branding. I need to know this. I need to know that. And I got to fix this from yesterday. And I have to be worried about this for 3 weeks from now. And where's the money going to come from? But the reality of it is, a lot of times this journey is day by day until you build up enough to where you can know that, okay, this is going to work and I can delegate this to that specific person. Right. And eventually you sort of level up along the way. But I know from your perspective, you're speaking to something completely different in terms of people being in control. And I want you to do a deeper dive into that question as far as what that looks like from a venture capital perspective, even from an angel investor perspective. Okay. And again, even from let's say a publicly traded company, what does control actually look like for entrepreneurs?
As an entrepreneur, you are not in control of any aspect of this journey. The first part is, back in January, I made the video about Honey Pot being sold. And this has happened or the acquisition. This has happened with Mael. This has happened with Shea Moisture. It's happened quite a bit. And what folks don't realize is, beyond the fact that once the acquisition happens, the CEO doesn't just leave or the founders don't leave. They usually stay on about 3 to 5 years, right? And then what also happens, though, even with the acquisition itself, it takes 6 months to a year for it to be done. And typically, and it can even take up to 3 years. I've seen it take that long. Yeah. And I said all that to say, when a company has investors, if you are someone who's looking to take venture capital money or take PE money, if you're looking to take angel investor money, you are no longer in control. You are at the mercy of your investors. You're at the mercy of your customers. You are at the mercy of the market climate.
Yep.
Just because something works today might not mean it works in 6 months. And it could be as simple as your ads aren't working right. It could be something like, it's not a product that I need to continually buy over and over again. Yep. Is it something I buy one time and I'm good for 6 months? So how do you get client or customer acquisition? Or is it something where how do you retain your customers? There are so many underlying variables that you are not in control. And let me be very clear. And this is why I say quite often that if you are someone, especially as an early startup, if you're under 3-4 years of your company, if you can help it, do not take venture capital money. If you can help it, do not take PE money. And everyone wants to raise, and everyone wants to say that they raised a significant amount of money. But the reality is, with some and not all, some private equity funds and some venture capital funds, you essentially work for them. I just had a meeting with a multi-billion-dollar fund, and they only do 100% takeovers. You have now become an employee of your own company. You now work for them. So you need to understand that when you think you're in control, and because you have a title of a founder and the title of a CEO, it's not up to you anymore. Investors aren't giving you money for fun. This is not a charitable act.
Right.
This is with the expectations and the hope of making our money back. And especially when you go to an institution, they want their money back in 12 to 18 months. They're not sticking around for that 10-year time frame, which is why by the time you take those larger checks, you should be in your Series B and your Series C of the investors, even your Series A, depending on how much money you need to raise. And if it's a consumer product good, like a physical product, then you would need to raise institutional money a little sooner. But you need to understand your contracts. You need to understand your legal team. You need to there are so many people involved that if you think you are in control, you are fooling yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to take a step back to something you said as well. This morning, on the way here to the studio, I get a text message. Something, $5,000. Yesterday, something, $11,000. Something else, oh, this fell apart. Over here, contract. Over here, acquisition that was supposed to happen 6 months ago is now being moved another 6 months. I'm in control of nothing.
Right.
I can only manage what I can. I can only control what I can control, and that's how I handle my day-to-day. When you have a consumer product good, and I just had Candera on recently, There was a manufacturing issue. There is a supply issue. There's a chip shortage. The prices of chips are going up. I don't know if you remember, I think it was last year after the iPhone 15 came out, or maybe it was the 14, there weren't enough iPhones. There was a chip shortage. Apple is not even in control, and they own part of their manufacturing.
Yeah.
So if you think that you're in control of your company and your business, you are not. You need to consistently be okay with pivoting, and if you can't manage and handle stress, then this journey is not for you.
Yeah. So why don't you speak a little bit about who the journey actually is for?
The journey of entrepreneurship is for someone that is audacious. If you know that what you have created can truly, by the way, there's a difference between a passion and a purpose. If something is a passion project, and I know this is going to be controversial for some folks, if you're going based on your feelings like, oh, I'm passionate about this right now, it's going to be fleeting. Because when this shit gets hard, you're going to want out. Because what you're passionate about today might not be what you're passionate about 6 months from now. I started off as a beauty. I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I started off in beauty. I'm passionate about beauty. But I don't like that shit enough to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't like it enough that when it got hard and that the negativity comes in, I'm not built for that.
Right.
When it was time to raise money, I realized I'm not built for that. When it comes, there's just so many elements, and still to this day, I am passionate about beauty, but not enough to make content around it, build a brand around it, sell anything around it. It just doesn't work like that for me. So when you know why you're doing something, and typically we're solving a problem for ourselves before we decide to solve it for other people. And also, just because you solve it for yourself, it doesn't mean that it's an opportunity to monetize it. If money is the motivator, entrepreneurship is not for you.
Why is that?
If you do great work, if you solve a problem for people, if people understand the value of the brand, if they trust the founder, if they trust the products, once you've built a loyal cult around a company or a brand, the people will come. The money comes. It will come. But if you're in it for the money, people can see through that. If you can't tell a story as to why this is important to you, outside of, I just want to make money and I want to be rich or wealthy, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
People can tell when you're doing something for the money. We also live in a day and age where information is so readily available that they don't have to shop with you anymore. They get to scroll for 6 months.
Facts.
There's likely 3,000 other companies that are doing the exact same thing. How do you separate yourself from everyone else? And if you cannot communicate through a story, through excitement, through education, through entertainment, this is not going to work.
Yeah. What do you feel are some tangible things that someone listening to this, if they decide they want to be an entrepreneur, someone who's sitting in corporate just like I was 7 months ago and trying to figure out life and trying to decide that entrepreneurship, whatever that journey looks like, is for them, what are some tangible things that you can tell them, hey, I would start here and then move forward?
Start with what the idea is. Can you realistically create it? Which realistic, if you're an entrepreneur, you know there's no such thing as reality, like realistic. We are all very audacious and we all have the guts and the balls to create in spaces that sometimes aren't even available to us. How much is it going to cost you? A business plan is important. However, understand that whatever you think you're building today might not be the end product a year from now.
Right.
Be okay with pivoting. Be okay with evolving consistently, strategizing consistently, making sure that you're having conversations. If you're afraid that your idea is going to be stolen, this also is not for you. So understand that that may happen to you. It's happened to us over and over again.
Yeah.
But I always say if someone is willing to be the Gatorade or be the Powerade to my Gatorade, I'm okay with that. But also the difference with us in particular and really good, great entrepreneurs is implementation.
Yeah.
Someone can take your idea all they want, but they cannot implement like you do. So if you can do it better, do it faster, your brand and it'll be fine. And I would say that find mentors, understand product research, go find who's doing something similar and how can you make it better. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Again, there isn't really an original idea. It's what are you driving inspiration from and why are you doing it? And to a certain extent, we make the why a bigger deal than it is, because my why from 4 years ago isn't my why today. My why was Josiah to start Sarah Lifestyle. And even though the boys are obviously the driving force behind why I do what I do, it has evolved and turned into something so much greater than even I could have imagined, that now it's impact.
Right.
It's how do I help my community? It's how do I serve more people? How do I build schools in Ethiopia? It's what are all the things that I'm truly, like, what is the purpose work that I want to do? And how can each of those things lead me to the path and the direction that I want to go? And so I would say start off with knowing those things. Team. Another misconception we can talk about is, in addition to thinking you can do entrepreneurship alone, your team is going to be one of the quickest ways to get investor money, or it'll be your greatest downfall. Who you hire is just as important as what the product is.
What was the quote we heard earlier?
What's that?
Hire slow and fire fast. And I'm going to steal another quote. The gentleman said that in terms of firing someone, the time when you should fire someone is the first time you think about it. I believe that's a Brian Tracy quote. So there you go.
That is likely one of the most expensive mistakes I've ever made, is hiring the wrong people.
Yeah.
And also the most expensive part of my business. So also, if you think that entrepreneurship is going to be lucrative, this is not for you. Once the company even went into the green, my biggest expense is my team.
Yeah.
But I cannot scale this alone. I cannot grow this alone. I cannot expand into new territories and markets alone. I can't work on 7 different brands alone. I can't be on 7 different platforms alone. I can't learn and grow and expand in venture capital and join multiple ones alone.
Right.
I can't, even though I'm a single mom, I don't parent alone. I have help. I have a nanny. All of those things are necessary. So if you think that this is lucrative, I would think otherwise. So I would make sure that you also have plans in place. And if you think that you have 6 months of capital, you likely don't. You probably have like 6 to 8 weeks of capital if you don't understand your burn rate. Jesus, there's so much we can go through. Also, another misconception, when you're a company raised, let's say $10 million, and you're like, yay, that'll last them 3 to 5 years. No, especially if it's a consumer product, depending on their burn rate, that might be 18 months max.
Yeah.
Which is why you'll see companies continually raising. And actually, we can talk about this. We have these dialogues amongst us and our close friends who are entrepreneurs as well. You'll see a company raise like a seed round. Then it's their angel round. Then you'll have their series A, B, C, D, E. What I didn't realize that people didn't know is that companies keep raising even after they've IPO'd.
Yep.
Like, you have to keep raising. You need an influx of capital and cash. People don't realize, or folks don't realize, that the amount of capital necessary to run a business and required to run a business, if at a Series A, let's start with the seed round, just to get it off the ground, I need about 1.2 million, just to start. If you have a consumer product, you probably need a little more, or if it's a software company. If you're running SaaS, you need more. But there are some companies that are like on their Series D, on their Series E, they're raising $840 million, they're raising $400 million. What is it about that process or capital itself? Again, I don't want to scare people, but what do you believe people should know about how much capital they need to be an entrepreneur and maybe in the beginning stages how much they should have stored before they decide to go gung-ho full-time on this, or what that process looks like for an enterprise that's continually raising money and why they're raising money.
The number one reason businesses fail is due to cash flow. It's as simple as that, quite frankly. And most companies, because they don't have enough liquid capital, meaning that cash that they can use today or in some type of frequency where it's not like 7 weeks from now.
Right.
That cash flow is going to be the difference in whether a company survives or not. Survives tomorrow, 48 hours from now, a week from now, 2 weeks from now. And so it's having that knowledge. And to your point, companies are consistently raising. That's why we're able to buy stock on the stock market. And I think what a lot of people have to recognize when we talk about like even the raising of the capital, once you get to a certain place, these are investments made in order to seek some type of gain at some point later down the line. And so if your belief in a company is, okay, I need to invest in this company, whether it's on the private or a public side, is because you're expecting something later on in return. And we can dive deeper into even some of the terminology that we've used today, whether it's burn rate or even the idea of common versus preferred stockholders. There's all these different things that I think that people need to know that doesn't necessarily need to be said today because it can get really boring. But the idea is that when you talk about starting a company, building a company, and whether your company is able to be sustainable or not, a lot of times it just simply comes back to cash flow and what you readily have available.
Tilmon, thank you so much for coming on today's episode. If you want a part 2, let us know. There is so much. If you don't understand the language of money, if you don't understand the language of entrepreneurship, and these are based on our own mistakes, our own failures, the conversations amongst our friends who are entrepreneurs, there are so many conversations that can be had. If you have questions around preferred stock, common stock, what's an LP, which is a limited partner, what's a general partner at a venture capital or a private equity fund, if you want to know what 100% takeover is, again, there's so much language that we could use, but this segment would be 80 hours long. If you want to hear more from us, let me know. Tilmon, thank you so much for coming on. Where can the people find you?
Social media is all the same, Tilmon Keaton. Besides YouTube, Tilmon M. Keaton, although some people might not like that, but yeah.
Thanks, Tilmon. And we'll see you next time.